Skull Buffs, baby.
Welcome into this week's edition of SBS Football Live. The Colorado Buffaloes hoping to get back on the winning side of things with the Delaware Blue Hens coming to town. I'm Liam Howard alongside Harrison Simeon, Leo Rivera, and Matt Spivak. We have an incredible game coming up this week. Hopefully the Buffaloes can turn it around. But looking back to the Georgia Tech game that we just witnessed, what are some of your guys' thoughts? And obviously, with it being the loss, who disappointed you? What disappointed you about this game?
Well, I think what hurts the most is that it was a winnable game. I mean, you had 320 yards rushing given up by the defense, and I think the biggest disappointment would be that defensive front that they spent a lot on this offseason, especially the defensive line coming off a season where they led the Big 12 in sacks and then just kind of not showing up. I mean, they knew Georgia Tech was going to run the ball, and they still came up short over and over again, and didn't make contain, only one sack. So it really was, a struggle all night for that defensive front. And even still, they had a chance. Colorado getting 3 turnovers in that early part of the game in the first quarter. All 3 of them, I believe, were, but only scoring 7 points off of them. That inability to capitalize, paired with that shaky defense, that's not going to win you any games.
Yeah, I mean, I was disappointed with the quarterback play in particular, obviously by Caden Salter. I was expecting more of a spark, first game, everything he did at Liberty, we all know what he did. And then just 200 yards of offense, 46 on the ground. I was expecting him to use his legs a little more. And then that completion percentage of just 60%, I wanted that to be a little higher, especially knowing Pat Shermer's scheme, throwing a lot of those short balls. Definitely would have liked to see that be a little higher.
Carrying off on that passing game, I'm glad you brought that up, Matt, because there was such a lack of contribution from the wide receivers, from the skill positions that we have been so accustomed to seeing make splash plays over the last 2 years of Deion Sanders' offense. The leading receiver was Kalen Taylor, who was a running back. That's not a very good sign. When you have guys like Draylon Miller, you have guys like Omarion Miller, and then you went out in the transfer portal, you get Joseph Williams, you get Hakeem Williams, you go out and get Sincere Brown. These players had a lot of expectation coming into this week, and just seeing the opportunity not to see them on the field, not to throw any passes to them or have any design plays. I mean, freshman Quentin Gibson had the screen to start the game, but other than that, there didn't seem to be a lot of easy throws for Caden Salter to be able to get out to his receivers and get in rhythm, and that's something that I was a little disappointed in this weekend.
Yeah, I think obviously you got to look at the defense as well. They gave up pushing 500 yards of offense in this first game of the season. That's never a good look, but I think that part of that does have to fall onto the offense as well. They were given 3 turnovers in the first quarter. Only getting 7 points out of that is completely inexcusable, and when your defense is forced to stay on the field for all that time, then you get later into the game, and that's when you start to see them wearing down. You start to see them being less disciplined, and obviously this, it's not an excuse that I think any of the coaching staff would want to make for the team, for the defense, but that was certainly something that contributed to it. And Caden Salter, of course, with multiple opportunities at wide open passes to the end zone, didn't set his feet, and ultimately we missed that opportunity because of those poor throws. But even though there was so little to really smile about this week, what were some things that impressed you, or at least gave you a little bit of hope going into this week for what we got coming up against Delaware?
Well, I think you look at the offense and you are really, really impressed by how the running backs did. I mean, you saw Micah Welch. I mean, he 11 carries only and 64 yards out of it. You have to see more of that coming up this week and down the line. I mean, you saw that room without Dallin Hayden, who's been dealing with a hand injury, and you still saw valuable contributions from every member who stepped on the field. Obviously, you mentioned DeKalon Taylor in the pass game, only had 1 carry, but still, I mean, Coach Prime talked about today how they want to get him more involved. And then Simeon Price, I mean, he came in, did his thing, had a couple nice runs, I think a 15-yarder, and then totaled 5 for 30. So you look at the running backs and you think, hey, that can, if you get the wide receivers right, this can be a very balanced offense.
Yeah, I was really impressed with the kicking room. I know it's not the most exciting, but points are points. I mean, Mata went 2 for 2 on his field goals. I think he hit a 49-yarder, which is not bad. Went 2 for 2 on his extra points as well. And then newcomer Buck Buchanan, our new kickoff specialist, all 5 of those went into the back of the end zone for touchbacks. I mean, that's always a good sign to see.
Most definitely. When you talk about the offensive line that has gotten so much negativity over it, it was good to see a little sigh of relief to the fact that they can come in and they can protect Caden Salter. I mean, there was a couple of plays where they had a little bit of breakdown in protection, but when you talk about 4 new guys coming in there with Jordan Seaton, that's kind of expected. What we did see this week is something we haven't seen in years, and that was a great, yards per carry between all the running backs who touched the ball. And specifically, Michael Welch, you touched on, he was falling behind Xavier Hill. He was falling behind Jordan Seaton, and those guys were able to establish their will in certain aspects of the game. That's definitely going to be something that Pat Shermer and the offense are going to have to build on moving forward. But it was a bright spot. It was a little bit of a sigh of relief for Colorado fans who had a lot of question marks about this offensive line. It's just going to come down to the fact of how many opportunities are they actually going to get to run the ball. And I would love for them to continue hammering that counter action, when they were going both sides, even when they had, Larry Johnson and Zy Chrysler leading the way going towards the left. It was a very, very wide hole for all the running backs who were shooting through that B gap.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, the running backs were very impressive. You mentioned Michael Welch, of course. Very efficient runner with him. I think that the offense, the coaching staff almost struggled to know which guy to use at what time. It's an embarrassment of riches, which is a good problem to have, but it's like when you're not riding the hot hand, that can, that I think that's what led to a little bit of inefficiency there. But yeah, really impressive from those guys. And although the defense was struggling, as I mentioned, I want to talk about the linebackers, Martavius French, Reginald Hughes, tackling machines. They were flying to the ball. Martavius French especially, 2 fumble recoveries. He accounted for 2 of those 3 turnovers in the first quarter, 6 tackles, 5 of which being solo, and then 1.5 tackles for loss. That's a really good thing to see from 2 guys transferring in and hoping to pick up some slack in that linebacking core. But quickly, we got to touch on the timeout usage on the last drive of the game. That's been a huge talking point since the game. What did you guys dislike? What would you guys have done different? If you liked it, I'd love to hear it. What do you got, Harrison?
I mean, if someone likes it, they gotta get the brain checked, to be honest with you. I'm looking at the quote right here. When Deion Sanders not only not taking a timeout, but not really taking much accountability for it. Asking when the time was to call a timeout when you could have done it after either of those first 2 plays. Almost 50 seconds went off the clock between when the drive started and when they stopped the clock, when Caden Salter inexplicably scrambles out of bounds when he could have just slid for a first down. So it was inexcusable in all accounts, and you have to somewhat worry about that. I mean, because this is going to be a tougher schedule than most imagined for Colorado. The Big 12 has looked really strong so far. So you're going to see a lot of close games. And if you get in those close games and you have a coach that isn't going to manage the clock effectively, you could lose games on the back of coaching rather than what should be the case on just the better team winning.
Yeah, there's really no reason to end the game with both timeouts there. I mean, first play, we throw a little screen pass out there. You can debate on whether or not that was the right call. But then that second down, catch by Hakeem Williams, kind of like 15 yards in the middle of the field. You need to take a timeout right after that, give your players some time to talk over the third down, some rest, and just get the game plan flowing from there. So I would have liked to see him call a timeout there. And, no reason to end the game with 2 timeouts.
Focusing more on what Coach Sanders mentioned today, he, didn't see any problem with the end of the way that scenario folded out, which I thought was interesting because I think if you look at the national media, a lot of football coaches, not just NFL, but college guys, high school guys, there's been so many discussion amongst the coaching, world upon social media about what they would have called. At the end of the day, the game's over, guys. That's the really unfortunate aspect about it. There is an L on Colorado's record, and you either got to learn from it and move on, or you're going to let it haunt you throughout the season. So Colorado's going to have to make that decision themselves.
Yeah, and even if you want to look at it how, Dion put it, they had plays in place they wanted to run, it didn't go their way. They're still, you look at the drive before that. Their drive prior to that, they were draining considerable time off the clock. Maybe you use them then, even if it's just for a breather for your team. It'll eventually come around to give them a little more time on that last drive. And then, of course, with Caden Salter scrambling out of bounds on that play you mentioned, this is a veteran quarterback. You give him instruction, he's going to follow. I think this is something that probably wasn't communicated to him well enough. Like, hey, you got to use your legs, which Coach Prime said he wanted him to do. Get that first down, go down instantly. We have 2 timeouts. Like, I feel like that could not have been communicated to him clearly enough because it wasn't in his headspace. He was running out of bounds. But enough looking back at last week. We're going to go and look ahead to our game against Delaware this week. Who takes a step forward in this game, a needed step forward after the loss?
As much as I want to say the defense, and I could very much envision that, considering the opponent and the strength compared to a high octane offense like Georgia Tech's, I got to look at the wide receivers because Deion Sanders said that they got to get that right. That's what I asked him about the wide receivers, incorporating them in that offense, and especially where you have a guy down in Marion Miller, most likely with his hamstring injury. You got to look to guys like Draylon Miller. He had 6 targets, didn't really see much of contribution. A lot of his targets were kind of screens. You got to look to more of that downfield passing game. Him, Hakeem Williams, Sincere Brown, like you mentioned. Wide receivers overall have to step up and contribute to the offense more.
Yeah, I'm looking towards Caden Salter to really step up. I think now that he's got a game under his belt in the Power 4, and he's really going to need to start getting more comfortable in the pocket, throwing the ball, and also use his legs more. We know he can do that. Maybe on 2nd, 3rd down plays, he needs to get out of the pocket and run some more, and that'll really help our offense kind of click more as a whole.
When you talk about a unit that really wasn't spoken about much, the secondary of Colorado, I think, whoever's opposite of DJ McKinney, we saw both RJ Johnson and, of course, the freshman Tayon Parks in that role. Whoever's there needs to be more consistent. They were targeted early and often by Georgia Tech in that passing game, and it was no secret that they wanted to throw opposite of wherever DJ McKinney was. So, moving forward based on that schematically, Colorado's, defensive back are going to have to step up. They're going to have to get off blocks in order to help in the run game so they could fill their lanes and make sure that nothing gets outside of them towards those edges. Because Georgia Tech, when they ran those sweeps, when they had those motions towards the outside, a lot of the reason why they had success with that was because the cornerbacks are getting pushed back 10, 15 yards by the wide receivers, unable to shut off their blocks. You got to see better tackling from that unit coming into this week. And I think with the amount of times that Delaware is going to pass the ball, they're going to have the opportunity to display those skills.
Well, I saw actually, just to add to your point a little bit, there was a stat I saw that only, I believe, 3 missed tackles by CU. It wasn't like they were getting ran over. It was just they got caught in space and didn't get in good enough position.
Correct.
So you have to see more of that scheme, the scheme aspect of it improve, and then maybe the production will follow suit.
Correct. Yeah, I gotta agree with you on that. And looking at the defensive line is what I'm looking to take a jump forward here. We only saw 1 sack in this game against Georgia Tech. You got a mobile quarterback back there. You got to get pressure on him. And the other thing is you got to keep contained. We couldn't keep contained. We couldn't figure out the read option. And Delaware, one of their offensive strengths they bring in is what they do with their quarterbacks. Their quarterbacks aren't necessarily mobile guys, but they can scramble. They can make a play out. If a pass play collapses on them, they actually have good success getting out of the pocket. We saw with Nick Minicucci, the backup for Delaware, who came in after the injury to Zach Marker against Delaware State this past week. He showcased that in spurts. He showcased a good ability to operate in the open field, which is what Colorado was giving to Haynes King this past week. So defensive line has to improve. Georgia Tech's offensive line deserves a lot of credit, and I think that CU is going to have a much easier time getting after him and keeping that contained. But I think that's a must, that we need to see a step forward there. But obviously the fatigue of a loss, especially in the early season when things are already chaotic, you're already trying to figure out your identity, it can tend to creep a little bit, and it can last for a few games. Do you see that lasting into this game?
No. I think while, this is a new team, this doesn't have as many veterans maybe or with consistent production over their careers as we've seen the last couple of years. You saw last season there were a lot of uncertainties, and that loss to Nebraska was just an absolute, tire fire in all aspects. But you still saw a team that played week to week. You saw even when Colorado was winning, they would reset, prepare, one day at a time, taking things very incrementally, and I think that's what a Deion Sanders team can still do this year.
Yeah, I agree with you, Harrison. I think Coach Prime's going to get his players, get them a good chance to understand the sense of urgency going into this game. Already down 0-1 on the season, and definitely do not want to start winless in the first 2 games, especially against a non-Power 4 opponent. Struggle against Georgia Tech, but really the sense of urgency needs to be there.
Yeah, I think it's more of the opposite. I think it's more motivation than anything. It's fuel. You learn more about yourself in a loss than you do in a win. And I think Colorado learned where they need to get better coming into this week. They identified the holes in their, scheme and their defense, their offense. They're going to need to address those. Not only that, you're getting an opponent that's coming in with not too much experience within big FBS schools and big games like this. They're going to have to come in really prepared and really dialed in if they want to come in and compete with Colorado. And I think Colorado knows that. They know this is going to be a team that's going to come in trying trick plays, trying different things, whatever they can to get an advantage and an edge. Colorado needs to play sound, and they need to play discipline.
Yeah, this is Delaware's first time playing an FBS opponent as an FBS team themselves, and I think this is something that Colorado's going to jump all over. I think they're going to attack this game, and I think, like you said, that's how a Deion Sanders team is built. We kind of, his first team in 2023, I think that the losses snowballed on them, but they learned well from that. We didn't see that last year. It was very week to week. It'll be interesting to see how that works with a very new-look team, but I think that the coaching staff would have it no other way than to jump all over this game. But just quickly, consequences of a loss in a hypothetical world. What happens if they lose this game?
I mean, I don't know per se, because there's obviously various reasons. You have to look at a Pat Shurmur guy who's already kind of on the hot seat, took a lot of heat after game 1, and if the offense can't produce against Delaware, which maybe played with its food a little bit against Delaware State. You can't just see anything like that. I mean, you have to really worry with a coaching staff that has over 150 years of NFL experience to fall to a team in its first game at the FBS level as an FBS team. It's bad. I don't know what it is yet, but it's bad.
Yeah, with a loss, I would lose a lot of confidence in Salter. Starting job might be up for grabs at that point. You never know. Put Juju on the field, see what he can do. Again, a loss in my mind would mean bowl game hopes are definitely squashed, and it would honestly bring me back to Coach Prime's first year. And I think if we were to lose to Delaware, this season would definitely resemble the 2023 season.
I'm not even going to talk about a loss, because there was no way in this green earth that the Colorado Buffaloes are going to lose Saturday. If that happened, there's going to be a lot more questions and discussions that I don't even think we can imagine in our heads right now, and I'd rather not even think about. So I'm going to go ahead and pass this over to Liam Howard.
I got three things that are going to happen if they lose this game, ladies and gentlemen. This is Delaware we're talking about. Step 1, riots. The city of Boulder will be turning cars over if the Delaware Blue Hens are storming our field this coming week. Second is benchings. Salter's the first to go. I don't know who else will be followed in that.
Well, you're already going to see Juju this week.
Yeah,
so
Juju's already getting playing time
there
after a game against a really good opponent. If we lose to Delaware, I mean, Caden Salter better have a really good LinkedIn profile set up. Misery will be the next step after that. That is going to resemble what you said of the 2023 season. It snowballs, it gets out of control, and this team loses a lot of games from here on out. Again, as you mentioned, that better not happen. And complete speculation, of course. But the Big 12 has already kind of thrown us a little bit of chaos. So we're going to get to that in just a moment. But first of all, Mr. Leo Rivera has visited another restaurant this week. He's going to tell us what he thinks.
Quincy Wiggins bursted onto the scene this past weekend, recording a sack and a pressure, so we had to come out and check out the pressure on these wings.
If you have a favorite food spot in Boulder, and if so, what do you order from that place?
I can't really say I have a favorite food spot here in Boulder yet. I haven't really tested everything out yet, but there's this place called CD Wings that that's where we go. Whatever. But they have pretty decent wings. I get barbecue pretty much everywhere I go. I mean, I'm a barbecue type of guy.
So am I.
Yes, sir.
So
Thank you for the recommendation, Quincy, on that. I'm a barbecue guy myself. Oliver, what flavor did you get?
I got the lemon pepper. Like, I don't know why I'm a lemon pepper guy, but it's always stood out to me. It's tasted the best, but after that, I'm gonna have to dive into that barbecue.
All right, Oliver. Well, obviously Colorado didn't have the greatest performance defensively, but what stood out to you about Quincy Wiggins?
Well, he was able to pressure the quarterback. Colorado, they only had 1 sack, but that belonged to Quincy Wiggins.
73% completion rate. King looking for room, tried to spin away from one man and downed at the 19 by Quincy Wiggins.
And he was able to pressure Haynes King when he threw interception to DJ McKinney.
King throwing for just the second time. Got a defender at his feet. He throws a pick right to DJ McKinney, the 3rd turnover.
Obviously, we're only 1 game into the season, but what are some of your expectations for Quincy Wiggins and the rest of the D-line?
I think we need more consistency from that unit, Oliver. They need to get after the quarterback more, which I think they will do when they face more pass-heavy teams, but you got to stop the run.
As far as me personally, I want to get on the field and, finally wreak havoc, make a name for myself. That's what I'm looking for.
On my second bite of a flat here at CD's Wings, pretty good crunch, Oliver. Good flavor. Tender.
Yeah, you highlighted the crunch. That's what's really standing out to me in this point. Only my first one, but of these 10, I'm finishing all of them.
Oliver, you're a ranch guy, and no Colorado team's complete without the sauce. What kind of sauce are you expecting from the defensive line this weekend against Delaware?
Well, Delaware, they honestly didn't impress me too much in their rivalry game against Delaware State. We watched that together last Thursday. So I think that this could be maybe more of a tune-up game for them, a way to enforce their physicality, especially wanting to bounce back from this week 1 loss where they had many chances to win the game, especially with those 2 turnovers that Georgia Tech gave to them and the one that they forced with the DJ McKinney interception.
Well, one thing to expect is plenty of opportunities to rush the passer as Delaware runs a spread offense and really relies on the arm and legs of Nick Minicucci.
Sorry, that's Christian Grant, the safety. Sessum's in motion now. Minicucci gonna keep at the 5. Minicucci head down, powers in. Minicucci slings it. Kelly catches it and scores. Jack called Dion Big Brother to him earlier this week. On 3rd down, Minicucci plants his feet, lobs, man wide open. Walk in, Jake Thaw.
I mean, I think we can look for Delaware to try and pass the ball. They're going to look for the guys over the middle. The last few years, tight end crossers have been a big point of emphasis for offenses going against the Buffs. But I think being a college-age quarterback and seeing what he did against Delaware State, Minicucci is not afraid to scramble and, pick up some yards with his legs if the opportunity presents himself. But after only starting 6 games last year and only going against Delaware State in the season 1 season opener, I really believe it will be kind of tough for him to walk into Folsom Field in front of, potentially 45,000, 50,000, a sold-out crowd there in front of Coach Prime's offense, or into Coach Prime's defense, and try and make some plays happen.
First of all, for a kid to come off the bench and do what he did is phenomenal. Love the opportunity that he sees. It's not like he's a stranger to being out on the field getting reps. This kid is a baller. He just was prepared for his opportunity, so hats off to him.
Taking on a bite of the leg. We know this defensive line's got some weight up front, Oliver. How many sacks do you think they're going to get this weekend against Delaware?
I think you can pencil in at least 2. And that's just being safe. We saw one from Quincy Wiggins, like I said, but he was able to get to Haynes King at least a few times. That forced pressure and incompletions. The one interception that I mentioned. But not only was Quincy Wiggins able to get there, Jaheim Otis had a few plays on his debut game, and there are a few other guys that stood out who had a chance to get to Haynes King in the backfield. There was even a play on 3rd down where the Buffs had a holding penalty on the outside in the secondary where they were able to get to Haynes King. And that really stood out to me. That's something that they could replicate against Delaware.
Well, to finish off the back end of this meal, Oliver, we got some French fries. let's talk about the back end of Colorado and what they need to do to be better this weekend.
Well, there's a lot of things when it comes to, just the general scope of Colorado's defense. But looking at the back end, the secondary, Georgia Tech did not throw the ball too much to see how they will defend the pass. Of course, the DJ McKinney interception stands out. But as we saw in the run game, the defensive backs were having a struggle getting off the blocks against Georgia Tech's receivers, and that is not going to be a recipe for success when it comes to facing offenses who are going to run the ball to the outside.
Woo! Those are some good and flavorful wings, Oliver. Shout out Quincy Wiggins again for the recommendation. Here is the address to CD's Wings. We thank you so much for listening to this segment, and we'll see you guys next week. Quincy.
All right. Thank you for that. That was an incredible review. We got to move on to another review, this time of the Big 12. The Big 12 had an eventful week 1. First of all, let's talk about my pick to win the Big 12, Kansas State. What in the world is going on with them? What kind of team are they in the long term of this season?
Well, you have to look at who they have right now. Avery Johnson, a talented, dynamic quarterback. But they did lose some veterans. They lost, their big back, DJ Giddens, now in the NFL. They still got Dylan Edwards, but he got hurt basically immediately against Iowa State, and that didn't turn out well for them. So you look to him as the key contributor, besides Jace Brown as their weapons. Their defense still has looked good, but North Dakota, you can't be in that close of game with a team of that caliber. And I think Kansas State, for them, they've got to figure things out. I'm not going to sound any alarms yet, but it doesn't look that great.
Yeah, unlike last year, like you said, Harrison, they're really going to have to lean on that passing offense. Last year they were quite run heavy. We saw that when they came to Folsom and played the Buffs. But through 2 games this year, Avery Johnson's been pretty good. The first game was obviously in Ireland, a little sloppy all around. And then they barely escaped University of North Dakota last week, so that's not a great showing. But he balled out, past 43 passing attempts in that game. So that's really what I'm looking at is Avery Johnson.
Yeah, obviously so much expectation coming to Kansas State. Liam Howard, you picked them to be your Big 12 winner. And I think you got to be very disappointed and very concerned if you're a fan, because obviously you're 1-1, but you do have the one conference loss already to Iowa State, who is ranked and who has been rocking, right, moving forward. And when you talk about, that North Dakota team, it was really just concerning how close it was. And they didn't come back and take the lead until that final minute. Like you said, the one positive is that Avery Johnson was able to go down and lead that game-winning drive. You do want to see in the clutchest moments your players come out and perform clutch. But other than that, I think it's a lot of head-scratching and a lot of concern moving forward for Kansas State.
Yeah, I got to be honest. That's a scary loss or a scary win right there. And the first game with how they looked, this does not look like a good football team right now. I picked them to win the Big 12 on the back of their run game. They have when Dylan Edwards was looking like he was going to take the lead back role in this offense, and you've got Avery Johnson, who is a dual threat quarterback who can extend that run game. That's looking like something that can wear a defense down over time, but it's been anything but that since he got injured. And if he's not healthy, this offense clearly has not been able to function. I don't know if putting him back in is going to be the answer. The defense also looked solid at the start of the Iowa State game, but then they had a rough game against North Dakota, and so now they're going into Big 12 conference play, and you're like, I don't know what to think of this team. But moving across the state of Kansas, we are going to look at the Kansas Jayhawks. Aside from Iowa State, which we showed up there, and there's also the teams that are ranked within the top 25. Kansas kind of flying under the radar, the only other 2-0 team in the Big 12. Are they legit this year? They've kind of shown some up and down in recent years. Is this finally their year?
Well, they had, an opening test against Fresno State. Not a terrible team by any means within the Mountain West, but and then they stopped them 31-7. Jalen Daniels, an electric quarterback, and last year didn't go the way he wanted. They were a prime bounce back candidate, so it wouldn't shock me at all if they were legit. I'm not going to say anything quite yet. I know their second game was not really a high caliber opponent, but I do see them, have my eye on them for sure.
Yeah, I think they're legit as well. I see Jalen Daniels taking a step up this year. through 2 games this year. I know the competition's a little iffy, but he's thrown 456 yards for 7 tuds and only 1 interception, compared to last year through 2 games was 290 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions. So there's a big difference in those numbers right there.
All right, ladies.
And I mean, Kansas ended last year. They were pushing really strong. They won 4 out of their last 6 games, including 3 against ranked teams. One was us, unfortunately, but let's not talk about that.
You're right. Matt, they were starting to pick it up and get things rolling, and it was no surprise to me that they came in and started rocking and rolling this season. I got a chance to talk to the Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark this past weekend, and he mentioned, being at that Fresno State Kansas game with the renovated stadium. They have a lot of excitement in there, and you talk about Jalen Daniels, who comes back with that experience, another year. Don't underestimate what an offseason could do for a quarterback, especially one who struggled with turnovers. When you mitigate those mistakes and you go back and correct it from a season ago, it really has shown out into the outpour of offense that Kansas has produced. But we're going to have to see if they are able to maintain that against tougher opponents, especially when you talk about this Big 12 conference that is extremely deep. But I will say, I do think they are going to be able to be competitive within every game they play this season.
Yeah, being a competitive team has been their motto for every year of the Jalen Daniels era. And last year, I mean, even the games that they were losing, they got off to that rocky start. These were 1-score games. I mean, these are games that they're a bounce, they're a kick, they're one good throw down the field away from winning. And on top of that, I mean, with the play that we saw from Jalen Daniels, it's not the same Jalen Daniels that we're accustomed to when he's fully healthy. I think he was still struggling to come back from those 2 injuries he had suffered in the seasons prior. This season, he looks healthy. This is the Jalen Daniels that we saw bring College game day to Lawrence, Kansas for the first time ever when they were playing TCU, which looked like it was going to be one of the games of the year until he got injured and that team kind of fell off the map. When he is operating at his fullest, I have him as a Heisman finalist if this guy continues to stay healthy. And you also consider the amount of weapons he lost, losing Devin Neal, Luke Grimm, the likes. These are guys that were big contributors in the offense. There was a worry about regression, and he has stepped this offense up without those guys. So that's really impressive to me. I think he is going to lead this team well. And looking at CU, where do they stand against the rest of these teams, and how do they shake out in the standings looking long term?
Well, you look at their schedule, and a lot of the teams that they're going to be playing down the line have really impressed so far. TCU absolutely mauled North Carolina last night. That's no pushover. It wasn't going to be already. Utah, same thing. I mean, they absolutely destroyed UCLA. That was my Big 12 pick in Utah, so I'm a real believer that could be a definite loss, especially on the road. But again, it's so early. It's one game. You can't say for sure quite yet.
Yeah, I see us kind of right in the middle of the conference, possibly going 7-5, maybe 8-4. I would have that as my ceiling. 8-4 for us, that'd be a good season. I think our offense can be a top 5 offense in the Big 12 if we can get it going. Caden Salter can kind of get it going. Our rush game, our O-line looks a lot better than in recent years. And our defense, kind of middle of the pack as well. They can keep us in games if we can stop the run, but we're not sure if we can do that yet.
Thankfully for Colorado, their loss against Georgia Tech was non-conference, but it did show some weaknesses that they're really going to have to patch up if they are going to want to come out and compete against the Texas Techs, the Utahs, the Kansases, the Arizona State. So many tough teams on this schedule that are dominant in the trenches. They're able to run the ball. They're able to do all these things Colorado wants to do. That being said, I think they've shown enough within the sparks and the big plays that they had to give you some confidence that they are going to be able to come out and compete. But right now, I think it's just too early to tell. I think, jumping 2 weeks ahead to that matchup at Houston, that's going to be the big one.
Yeah, I think Colorado needs to show their identity in these next 3 games. These next 3 games are huge in showing their identity. Of course, the first conference game against Houston, but Houston sort of looked at as an underdog to compete in this conference. This needs to be a game where they are operating at their full capacity. They need to be operating the offense well. Their defense needs to be sound by that point. And then the Delaware and Wyoming games, I mean, you got to blow these teams out. You got to blow these teams out, and you got to use these games as tune-ups. And I think, when you're in a conference where I think there's you could even see 5 8-4 teams at the end of this year. This is the closest conference in college football potentially, and Colorado is right in that mix. Of course, they're kind of on the outside looking in with most preseason projections, but they've got a lot of talent on this roster. They have a lot of talent. They've shown that they know how to win. We saw what happened last year, and I think that if they can figure out their identity, figure out how to use their running backs efficiently, like I mentioned earlier, figure out how to get Caden Salter using his legs and throwing the ball efficiently, figure out how to get the defense to be adapting well to what is working well for the opposing offense. I think as long as they can do that, this is a talented team, and we could see them right in the mix with those other 8-4 teams at the end of the year. But before this game this past week, I went around to see the opening week tailgaters out here in Boulder. Let's go check it out and see how they were getting ready for the game. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for a new college football season. You know what that means. We got tailgate takeover. Georgia Tech coming to town. Let's go see how some people are getting ready for the game. All right, we got our first tailgaters of the day. What are y'all doing to get ready for the game today?
We're sitting here playing catch.
That's a good way to do it. One of the issues of a Friday game is there is just about nobody out here having to go for a hike to every single little tailgate we can find. But we got a good one over here. They got a full decked out bus. Maybe we got some free food. I haven't eaten yet, so we're gonna see if there's anyone who's willing to give me free food. Right here. This is your bus, sir?
He's the proprietor. Yeah.
It's great to meet you. What was your name?
Jeff.
Jeff, dude, this is the coolest bus I have ever seen at a tailgate.
Well, thank you.
What's the story behind it?
This is actually the second one we've had. We've just had a big tailgate since we graduated from CU, and we all wanted to ride up together, so we decided the bus was the best way to go.
What goes into buying a decked out CU bus? Is it custom made?
No, it was Craigslist. Craigslist and a wrap.
What does it run you for a bus like this?
I think all in, this has been about 10 grand.
Wow, awesome. I think that's quite the investment. I appreciate your guys' time. You guys enjoy the game, all right? Folks, how we doing? How we feeling before the game? We're doing good.
Good, man.
Thank you very much. It's very hot right now. I'm burning in this thing.
Look good. That's what's
yeah, that's important. Yeah, Georgia Tech, how do you guys feel about them?
Good team, like the quarterback. They're going to lose today.
Yeah. How are you guys preparing for the game? Some beers?
Probably like 10, 15 pregame. Then like another 10 during the game.
All right. You guys enjoy the game. We'll see you there.
Appreciate it.
Peace out, y'all. Thank you very much. Go Buffs. Go Buffs, y'all. All right, we're here with one of my high school buddies. How are you feeling about the game today? This dude's in the band, so he gets the special seat.
You know, it's game time. We always here, we ready. We have a great show ready. We've been practicing it for another month, so.
Yeah, dude. How is it like playing in front of these huge crowds now that we got Prime here? I mean, I guess you haven't really known anything different since you've been here, but is the pressure on there?
The pressure's on. You know, I've only been here for the last 2 years, which Prime is here, and you know, if the horror stories I've heard before is it's a completely different game now. The atmosphere is way better. Fans are more alive, and it's just a better time.
It's sick. We will hopefully see you out there. Thank you for stopping by.
Right.
Appreciate it, man. Good to see you. We're rolling up on probably the coolest CU vehicle in existence. This is the Buffulence. We need to go find out a little bit more about this. Are you the proud owner of the Buffulence here?
I am.
I have to ask, how does something like the Buffulence come to be?
Just a bright idea of a couple people.
That is amazing.
And a lot of support from a lot of friends.
I've never seen anything like it. This is awesome. You guys do your tailgate out of the back of this, I'm assuming?
We do. We usually park right here in this row with these other guys and just waiting for a spot to open up.
Do you guys draw a pretty big crowd for your tailgate?
We should have close to 90 today, I think.
Close to 90. Do you guys like get some good food going for the people?
Sometimes. It all depends on the situation, but Friday night game, it's hard to say.
I've never seen a Buffulence before. Oh, we got some more people coming out. We got some more people coming out today. We're starting to get to that time of day. It's getting hotter, but people are getting out here. How are we feeling about the game today?
It's gonna be 46-32 Buffs.
46-32 Buffs?
Yeah, Salter 4 touchdowns, 2 pass, 2 rush.
All right.
248 through the air.
248 through the air. How many rushing yards?
97.
97 rushing yards. All right, you got these down. What's that?
Get us on film.
Yeah. All right. Let's see a trick. Let's see a trick. Pressure's on. Oh, okay. Well, you want to give yourself a shout out? You just had a trick.
Shout out my friggin' boy Matt and Carson. Known them since 03.
Known them since 03, dude.
03.
03. That's as OGs it gets,
3 peas in a pod. Like, The 3 bears that stole the porridge from Goldie Line.
Yeah, Goldie Line?
Goldie Line.
You're losing your skateboard, by the way.
No!
So good. It's electric out here.
It's electric.
Right. So you're looking super dapper, and
dude,
enjoy
thank
the
you
rest
very
of your
much.
day in your interview.
You guys as well. Thank you guys for participating. Well, we're gonna see how far we can make it. Now we're not even able to get through a monologue. Doing good. You guys ready for the game? Oh yeah. Hold up. Get this. Look at this. What do we got here? Oh, the Heisman. That's amazing. That's a sick shirt, dude. You gonna wear that in, or is it a little too hot today? Too hot. Yeah, I was wondering. I'm feeling about the same way in my suit right now.
We're cooking up sliders. We got a hot dog grill.
And we might have to circle back because no one's fed me yet. So, thank you very much. Good. You guys ready for the game? Skull Buffs? Skull Buffs. For the most part, too hot for tailgating. Flying a bunch of CU flags. Got a Cubs flag up there as well. I'm a Cubs fan, so I think I'm gonna like these people. Can I ask y'all, how are we getting ready for the game today?
Drinking, family, steak.
Steak?
Beer pong.
Oh, yeah. How are we feeling about this season? Not sure? What's got you not sure?
The unknowns.
The unknowns.
Transfer portal.
You guys feel pretty faithful in Coach Prime, though?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We beat 1 in 11.
Yeah, that's a good. We were 1 in 11. Coach Prime. All right. Well, unfortunately, I think we might have been a little too early. It is a Friday. We don't have a whole ton of people out tailgating yet, but we still got to see some very unique individuals. We're gonna have quite the crowd here tonight. But next week we got Delaware Saturday morning. That's gonna be quite the tailgate takeover. We will see you back for next week's game.
All right, now to this week's games. We're going to look around the Big 12. We're going to pick who we think is winning this week. We're going to start off with Baylor on the road at SMU. Who do you got?
I got the Mustangs. They're my ACC pick. I've got to, think they're going to go, even though it's not a conference game, doesn't really count towards what I predict to happen. Baylor's no pushover. They gave Auburn a test, but I think SMU, feeding off the home crowd, takes home the win.
Yeah, I'm going to go with SMU as well. Baylor gave up a bunch of rush yards against Auburn, and I think Kevin Jennings, the returning QB, is going to have his way with that defense. Got the Mustangs.
This one was very hard for me because I was, I wouldn't say high, but I expected Baylor to be one of these top finishing teams within the Big 12, and they still have the possibility to do that. But when you look at this matchup, it's going to be a really big uphill climb against a team like an SMU who's physical, who had that experience a year ago going deep into their conference run, and that's going to carry over into this season. I think they're going to have the edge on Baylor.
Yeah, Baylor's defense looked rough against Auburn, and that's not a good thing when you're going up against an offense the caliber of SMU and Kevin Jennings. I think that SMU's probably a better offense than what they faced last week, so if they're going to bring out anything similar to that, I'm going to have to go ahead and take SMU in that game as well. But next, we're going to look at the Iowa State rivalry, this one playing in Ames.
I think the Cyclones have looked among the most impressive in the Big 12. You have to look at, a team, in Iowa that has an offense that they're starting to figure out, but still, now having to face a defense like Iowa State has, along with Rocco Beck still behind them, at quarterback. I got the Cyclones there, and I hate that graphic.
Iowa State's won 2 of the last 3 matchups versus Iowa, yet have not beat them in Ames at home since 2011. Despite that, I'm still taking Iowa State. I agree with you, Harrison. They've looked really good. Obviously, we know how Iowa likes to play. They want to run the rock. They want to play good defense. If it was up to them, they'd probably want to win 13-10. So the Iowa State blueprints just to stop the run, force Iowa into long second and third downs. And if they're throwing on those downs, I think it's all Iowa State.
See, this one's interesting because when you talk about rivalry games, these two teams know each other so well. They know exactly what they want to do. They both play very similar brands of football. But at the end of the day, only one of these teams is ranked, and only one's going to come out with a victory, and that's the Iowa State Cyclones. I think they're going to come out and assert some dominance within this rivalry and come out and put a good whooping to little brother per se.
Yeah, Iowa State was kind of in that same boat with Kansas State, looking sloppy in that first game, but they've bounced back incredibly well, much better than how Kansas State has bounced back. They've adjusted just fine. I think the Dublin curse is pretty one-sided with these teams, but Iowa is a wild card. They're a bit of a wild card team. We haven't seen much of them. They played FCS Albany, and so we really don't know what we're getting out of them, but Iowa State's offense, just too good. They can air it out with Rocco Becht. Carson Hansen is a great running back, and they can lean on him if the passing game isn't going the way that they want to. It's in Ames. I'm going to take the Iowa State Cyclones in that atmosphere. Next, we're going to go to Eugene, Oregon, where the Oklahoma State Cowboys are on the road to play the number 6 Oregon Ducks. Who do you got?
Well, Oklahoma State coming off a game against UT Martin and then going into Autzen to play Oregon is a Grand Canyon-sized talent gap. I mean, I'm going with Oregon. I don't really know if it's, you got to think too hard. Obviously, the Big 12 brethren, but Oregon, they're, going to be a force as always. They're perennial, and I got Oregon there.
Yeah, this was one of the easiest picks for me as well. Obviously, going Oregon. I think this game will look similar to when the Buffs played Oregon back in 2023. I just think that there's no chance for Oklahoma State in this one.
Coach Gundy said at Big 12 Media Days himself that this is going to be a rebuild year. I think the fact that their quarterback got injured in the game a week ago, it just completely stacks up against Oklahoma State, and I think the Ducks are going to put a pounding on them.
Yeah, this is a game between two very young teams. Obviously, Oregon projected to have the better talent, and they've looked like it so far. Dante Moore is a great quarterback to have in that offense. He leads it well. Oklahoma State, I feel like it's pretty much impossible to be as bad and as disappointing as last year was. But they're a weird team. They're young. You don't really know what you're getting out of them. And Coach Gundy was taking his shirt off at his press conference this week. I don't know what is going on with the Cowboys. With all the uncertainty, though, I think the Oregon Ducks are going to come out victorious. But then we move to the border war being reignited between the Missouri Tigers and the Kansas Jayhawks. Two powerful offenses clashing. Who do you got?
I mean, that's must watch. I mean, it's the first time, I think, was it 2011? They got the Flames going. I saw some very heated dialogue online that I probably can't echo on television right now. But I got Kansas. We talked about them earlier. They look legit. They look like a powerful team. I think this one could go either way. Missouri has a ton of talent. Get the SEC benefit of the doubt. But I think Kansas goes in there and takes it home. I think it's going to be an amazing game.
Yeah, we've talked about Kansas's offense, and their defenses look pretty good too. Only allowed a combined 14 points and 357 yards of offense through the first 2 weeks. That's pretty substantial. But on the other hand, the Missouri offense looked real potent last week against Central Arkansas. I know that's another not great competition, but I'm going to go with Missouri. I mean, Prabula, their quarterback, combined for 348 yards last week, including 4 touchdowns, 2 through the air, 2 on the ground. I really liked watching their offense, and I'm going to take a gamble on them.
Yeah, this was another tough one for me. When you talk about this Missouri team, they had so many pieces last season that, allowed them to come out and compete in games. But this team's so inconsistent. That's the problem. They've gotten beat up, they've struggled with the injuries, and they've struggled to come out and stay consistency. And when you look at this Kansas team, I'm a big fan of, Jalen Daniels. I'm a big fan of his older brother. And I think, carrying over into this season, I think they're going to come out and have a lot of success. And I think this is going to start off with a big win against Missouri. This is going to be the toughest opponent they have. And I think this will be a statement win for Kansas.
Yeah, the energy at the stadium going to be absolutely electric. Being played in Columbia. This game, of course, hasn't been played since 2011, and it was actually held in Kansas City from 2007 to 2011 in those last few matchups. But now going back to that on-campus site, that atmosphere, it's going to be tough for Kansas. But as I mentioned earlier, Jalen Daniels is a dog. He's a dog, and he's going to go in there. He's going to have a great game. I think that this is where we start to realize, this dude is for real. He's back, and I'm going to go ahead and take the Jayhawks with the win. And I think Kansas football is back, ladies and gentlemen. But up next, Arizona State taking on Mississippi State, two teams that had a bit of a rocky week one. Who comes out on top?
Yeah, I think Mississippi State, it's another Big 12 team on the road against an SEC opponent, but Mississippi State, by SEC standards, is not quite what you'd imagine. So I got Arizona State there. Didn't have the most impressive week one either, but, Kenny Dillingham, really, really impressed. He's going to do an amazing coaching job for the next decade, at least, at Arizona State. So I got the Sun Devils there.
Yeah, I'm taking the Sun Devils as well. I think Sam Leavitt is going to throw all over Mississippi State. Their defense only has 5 returning starters from last year, and I don't know if that's a recipe for success, so I'm taking Arizona State.
When you look at these matchups, I'm a big believer in the quarterback and the head coach who are better are most likely going to win the matchup. I believe Kenny Dillingham and Sam Levitt are the better duo. And when you look at the fact that Arizona State struggled last week, you got to consider NAU is a rival. All right, they are a Big Sky opponent, and so it was a little rough for them to come out rocky. But I think you check that off as a warm-up game. You check it off as them getting their screws tightened up, trying to figure out how to play football. And unlike Colorado, they at least got it done.
Yeah, it was a weird week 1 for both these teams. Mississippi State, of course, on the ropes against Southern Miss. And then, as you mentioned, Arizona State was battling with NAU for a little while. This is a team that went deep into the playoff last year. And I think that showed how vital Cam Scadaboo was to their offense last year. I don't think it stated enough how much losing him, not only as a player, but as a spark plug, is going to hurt that team.
Yeah.
But with that said, though, Mississippi State kind of in shambles as a program right now. I don't have a ton of faith in their offense. I think Arizona State is just going to outscore them. They can just take the top off the defense, and they can take shots downfield. Sam Levitt, a great quarterback. So I'm going to go with Arizona State. But then we move to Kansas State facing Army. This is one of those games where the chaos can take over and get weird. Two teams with really weird starts to the year. Who do you got?
I've got Kansas State. I think they calm things down. I think Army, they just have not looked good at all so far. I like Avery Johnson as always. Again, the quarterback being a big factor in this game. I think they kind of settle things down. I'm not going to say they blow Army out by any means, but I do think Kansas State comes home with a pretty easy win.
Yeah, Army lost to Tarleton State, so I don't know how much faith I have in them beating Kansas State. So I'm definitely going with the Wildcats on that one. And I just think the defenses, they're pretty even, but this Kansas State offense is just way ahead of Army's.
Yeah, this one was a no-brainer for me coming in. Kansas State all the way. I think Army's going to get ran out of the building pretty quickly, and I think Avery Johnson's going to have a lot to do with that. You talk about a team that struggled last week against North Dakota. This is their chance to get their get back. They're not going to have a very difficult opponent this week. You want to right the ship. You got to get, go in the right direction before you start more conference play. This is the game to do it, and I think Avery Johnson and Kansas State are going to come out and get the W.
When I looked on the planning document that we all share for this game, this show beforehand, one thing I noticed about I don't tend to look at the other picks, but I just want to shout this out. Patrick Dawson had Army in all caps as his pick for this game. I have no idea why. I have no explanation for it. I just want to put it out there that Patrick Dawson picked Army by 1,000,000 over Kansas State. But as for me, I will not be taking Army. A loss to Tarleton State's brutal. Kansas State struggled against North Dakota, which is a higher-end FCS team. Still shouldn't be struggling to them at the end of the day. But this, it's in Manhattan. I feel like this is a game that they must win. Dylan Edwards potentially coming back for this game. They could get that running offense on track. I'm going to go ahead and take the Wildcats. But that leads us into our final game. We're going to talk about the Delaware Blue Hens coming to Boulder to take on the Colorado Buffaloes in Delaware's first ever FBS game as an FBS against an FBS opponent as an FBS team. Who do you have taking this game?
Well, you got to look at Delaware. You got to look at Minicucci. Coach Prime gave him tons of praise. You look at an offense that can score a lot of points, has high octane, that can throw the ball well, and that limited Delaware State squashed them through the air. That being said, Buffs by 40.
Yep.
Yeah, I really think this game's going to be one in the trenches. Our O-line and D-line should out-physical them and out-strength them every day of the week, and I got the Buffs.
You know what? I'm a big Nick Minicucci fan. Over the last week, we've grown to appreciate his game here at ScoBuff Sports. He brings a lot to the table. He can get it done with his legs. He's not afraid to go and run someone over, as you guys saw in the highlight reel. But the Colorado Buffaloes are going to come back, get a bounce-back win. They're going to rush for 200 yards on the ground as a team. Quote it.
Delaware State did it.
Delaware State did it.
Quote it.
And they're going to get a victory.
This Delaware team is weird. You've got Minicucci, he mentioned, backup quarterback comes in. I always love a story of a backup quarterback who comes in and he can spin it. And this dude can run, too. He can truck dudes. He can run. I don't know when they started growing quarterbacks out in Delaware, but they got a couple. And then their defense flies to the ball. I was noticing that on tape. Their defense actually flies to the ball. They do have the tendency to lose contain a little bit. The quarterback can get mobile, and that's a good thing for Caden Salter if they know how to use him this week. But with that said, very similarly to Patrick Dawson's faith in the Army Black Knights, I am going to put my faith behind the black and gold. Give me the Colorado Buffaloes to kick the Hens back to the barn by 1,000,000. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us here on ScoBuff Sports Football Live. It's been incredible having you. We will see you next week.